Hey family, Dad here. Hope you're having a great day. On this video, I just wanted to talk about, I'm 50 years old and looking back, here are the biggest money mistakes I made in my lifetime so far. So a few things that just stick out top of mind were when I was 30 years old, not smartest things I did with my money was cashing out my 401k. So I started investing in my 401k at my first job when I was roughly about 23, 24 years old. First big boy job. I slowly accumulated a little bit of 401k funds up until I was like 30 years old. I had roughly about $40,000, but at that time I was going through my lowest of my lows. I was going through a divorce. I had no job. I had no emergency fund. And life will hit you hard all at once if you're not prepared. I panicked with all of those things that were happening in my life. Fortunately, I got back to work quickly and then found a better job. But during that job gap, I was really stressing out. What I did was I went ahead and cashed out my 401k. After taxes and the penalties and all that, I got roughly about $30,000, which paid off my credit card debt. I should have been better looking back. I should have cut some expenses. I should have budgeted and just making sure what are some unnecessary things that I could cut out of my life and live lean for a short period of time. Could have been for a year, could have been a year and a half, could have been 2 years. So I can pay down the $30,000, roughly $30,000 in credit card debt. Number two was not having an emergency fund. So that goes hand in hand with cashing out my 401k because that was quote unquote my emergency fund, my rainy day fund. You shouldn't look at it like that. I should have had an emergency fund during the time when I had no job, when I didn't have an emergency fund, and when I was going through a divorce. I also should have had an emergency fund during my first layoff, which happened in 2009. I was not prepared. Again, life hits you when you least expect it. And I was living outside of my means. I spent what I made, and thus I was caught with my pants down. Now, fortunately, the job gap was only for about 3 months. My parents were helping me out a little bit as well, which I'm very fortunate. And I got a little severance as well to cover me for that short job gap. And fortunately, 3 months later, I did find another job. But looking back, having an emergency fund, have at least 3 to 6 months of emergency funds, live lean, cut some expenses which don't make sense, and pocket that into a high yield savings account. Now, for me, I have 12 months of a rainy day fund, emergency fund. But that's because I've been laid off 4 times. And having 12 months of emergency fund gives me a little more comfort than having 3 to 6 months. And that goes to my next one, being laid off 4 times in my career. The first layoff was scary, but I started saving for an emergency fund right after that. The second through the 4th layoff, it wasn't as scary because I was prepared. Now, I did receive severances for all my layoffs. Fortunately, with an emergency fund and the short job gap, I was able to pocket some of that severance money. But it's always good to have an emergency fund to fall back on to pay your mortgage, rent, food, groceries, bills, all that good stuff. Provides a sense of relief where I didn't have to focus on the anxiety and stress of money, paying bills, and I could focus on finding my next job. One of the other mistakes I made in life was buying a brand new car. Now I was roughly about 32 years old, and I thought I deserved it. I worked for a company that provided a car allowance. It was roughly, I think, about $1,000 to $1,100 per month, and I thought I could afford this new car. Then I got laid off and stuck with a car note and a car payment. Now, fortunately, again, I found a job within 3 months, so I only had a 3-month job gap. But the added stress of having a car payment with no job was not good. And mind you, it's not only a car payment, right? It's insurance, it's maintenance, it's gas, it's all that stuff that you have to worry about on top of a car payment. Now, for me, I'll never again buy a new car. I usually stick with used cars that are 3 to 5 years old. And if I do have to finance it, I'll finance for no more than 3 years. And the goal is to pay it off no more than 18 months. Now, even if you have a 6-figure salary, I would stay away from expensive cars. They're not worth it once you factor in the insurance, gas, maintenance. I've shared a few videos on maintenance of costs on my used cars, tires, brakes, all that stuff can surprise you in a heartbeat. And cars depreciate over time. It's not worth it. Stick with used, reliable cars, in my opinion, that you can easily afford a car payment and pay it off in less than 3 years. No one cares what you drive. If they do care, then they're not your friend. So tell me your thoughts. What are your biggest money mistakes? Is it a car? Is it a house? Comment, like, subscribe. I would definitely appreciate it. So that's all I got. I'll see you all at the next video.